It is finally the time to start our seeds again, but what is the best way to do it and what are the common mistakes? In this video, we're gonna look into exactly that, and I'll teach you everything you need to know to start your own seeds. Now, in order to start seeds, we're just gonna need 4 things. Firstly, we're gonna need pots or trays, some compost, the seed, and of course, some water to start the process. Let's first talk about the pots. What tray do you pick? We generally go for the module trays. The main reason for that is that we can grow a lot, and also we only have to plant them once, because growing them in a seed tray, we need to transplant them and prick them out into cells. Now for salad, because we want to grow so many, we start them in a seed tray, so we have good germination and we have control over how many we get per cell. So that's all you need to know about our pots and trays. Next up, we're gonna look at compost. I usually use some general potting mix or just some general compost. If I am sowing smaller seeds, I run it through a sieve. I've got 2 sides here. One went through a sieve and the other side didn't. So it's a little bit more chunky and there's some more fibers in it and maybe some woody bits like, well, I got a branch over here.
Now you can just go ahead and pick up some general potting mix. You don't have to get special seeding mix for this. If it's too chunky, just run it through a sieve and it's fine to grow seeds in.
So that's all you need to know about compost. Next up, we're of course gonna look at our seeds.
As you will notice, most seeds don't really have a distinctive top or bottom. This is because they use gravity to determine what side is up and down. As a rule of thumb, when planting your seedlings, they only need to go down as deep as they are big. So for most seeds, 1/2 centimeter or 1/4 of an inch is enough. When buying seeds, all you need to look out for is the expiration date. If the expiration date is already this year, then try and find another package that has an expiration date for next year. If the expiration date is coming up close on your seeds, then sow more than you think you're gonna need, because usually the germination rate is way lower. So now that that's all covered, let's start with filling up a tray.
Just rub off all the excess and that's completely full. Now I like to make some small indentations with my fingers. This really helps with getting the seeds in the middle of your pluck tray, because sometimes they like to wander off to the side. Now today we're gonna sow our spring onions. It's the white Lisbon. We're gonna aim for about 6 to 8 per clump, so we're gonna multi-sow them. And I'm not gonna be too precise because, well, we can always take a few seedlings out if it's too much. Right, so that's it filled up. We're just gonna put the seeds back in the package. Don't put them back in the package if your hands are wet or if there's a lot of compost on your hands, because then you actually create moisture inside of the bag and that will be really bad for your seeds. So my tray is filled up and now it's time to top it off, and the seeds are quite small, so like I said before, we're just gonna do a layer of the same on top. This is just a fine sprinkle really. We don't have to overdo it. That's it, done.
Be aware that some seeds like to germinate in light, so check the packaging and make sure that you don't top off any seeds that need light to germinate, like salad.
Now before we get to the watering part, let's look at pricking out seeds. I've also went ahead and filled up a seed tray. Push it down a little bit to create an even level. Now this compost is really dry, and before we put on the seeds, I usually like to make sure that it's completely wet and soaked through, because if we water afterwards, all the seeds will flow away. You know when it's ready, because then the water will drop out of the bottom. Now we can add our seeds on top. Today we're gonna do some lettuce seeds. We just sprinkle them on top like this. You don't have to do too many. This is already a lot. This is more than 100 seeds in this small area, like I have over here. We can grow many seedlings in a small area and then prick them out and only pick the ones that are strong enough to make it. I filled up another tray and we're just gonna prick out our rucola here. And it's really important you get your seedlings before they are too big. Right, all the seedlings are transplanted and now it's time to give them some water. The best way to do this is putting the seedlings on the floor or on any area that can get wet without any issue. This way you have a nice area around it that you can use to your advantage while watering. Grab a watering can with a fine rose and start pouring on one side of your seedlings. Go over it 2 times and then wait for about a minute and then go over it again. The first time watering is all about moisturing the surface level, but if you dig down, you can notice that actually underneath there's no water yet. So after a minute, the second watering really goes down all the way to the bottom and creates that healthy place for your seeds to start. I almost forgot to add a label, so it's really important to write down what you've sown and when you've sown it so you can later figure out what it actually is that is growing in your tray. Writing down the date also helps with your plan for next year. Now that the seedlings are pricked out, the seeds are sown and the trays are filled up, where do we leave them? For us, it's in the attic. We have a special growing rack with growing lights that make sure that there's enough light for the seedlings to actually poke up. Then after that, we move them into the greenhouse when they're strong enough to take the cold. If you want to put them in your windowsill, that's fine, but make sure that there's enough light so that it's facing south and that you have a lot of daylight there, because else your seedlings will get too leggy. They will also grow towards one side. You can counter that by rotating it, but again, your seedlings probably will get quite leggy. So it might be good to invest in a light, or you could buy a cold frame or a tent that keeps off the moisture and still lets in all the light. It doesn't matter too much where you leave them, as long as you put them somewhere where there's enough light. Now there's also something to be said about temperature. Some seedlings do need warm temperatures to germinate, so it's good to put them maybe above active heating or maybe on top of your fridge. That also tends to get quite warm. So anything that is a little bit warmer, maybe a heat mat if you have one, will do the trick for peppers, tomatoes. They do really like to get some extra hotness. Now if you want to learn more about gardening, here is a video with 10 things every gardener should know.